Yeah. So if you could just give me a brief introduction of, your interest in real estate. I know you've been, you've had some success in the investment side of things, and you traded a little bit for in the past. And if you just explain kind of from start to finish, like from even where you and I met, catch me up on, we used to volunteer together at ULI, and then
Right.
I know you went to law school, and
Mhm.
then transition me into what you're doing now. And I'll start kind of like I'll start the YouTube piece like right when you start talking about this.
Perfect. Okay. So, yeah, hi everybody. My name is Bahador. Daniel and I go back several years. We met back at the Urban Land Institute, Toronto. There was an event we were volunteering at. And in any case, from there, fast forward all the way to now, a lot has changed in my life. I've gone into a different direction, but it was really just an accumulation of uh, my story directing me into like the journey and the path that I was meant to be on. And I feel like now I'm finally at a place where I'm starting to do something that I can really be fully focused on and feel like I'm doing something that's bigger than just a business idea. So yeah, right now I'm working on this venture called the Power Hour Talks with a few colleagues of mine. We're actually co-authoring a book together, and the main topic is basically what are the things that we learned along our journeys, and what are the things that we've learned in books and in other articles and videos and any kind of way that we've learned knowledge from other people, um, about how people who achieve great things or who are high performers, how do they optimize their performance? How do they create the habits to have that kind of performance on a consistent basis, not just once a year this person comes up with a great idea or something. So really we're just completely focused on creating this platform. We believe in it. We know how much it's affected our lives, and we just want to continue seeing the benefits of it and sharing it with others. So I'm not really focused on a day-to-day law practice. I am in the process of writing the Ontario bar exam, and I did my law degree at Michigan State. I learned a great deal about U.S. law, and I just learned a great deal about my life and about myself. And yeah, here we are now. So
Awesome, awesome. I feel like now more than ever, while we're all kind of like locked in our houses for the next little bit, what you just described is going to become crucial for a lot of people to get by, but also to progress through the challenges that we're facing as individuals. So how, like, what can you give me like a little bit of backstory on what prompted you, from your past, like in being so successful in real estate with investment and sales, to wanting to pivot into what you're doing now, and how important that is, and what people can do best to use the sort of principles that you just discussed in a time like this.
yeah, so I want to jump right into what we can do right now collectively. Anybody that's dealing with this traumatic situation, there's a lot out there, and there's a lot of confusing information. There's some things that say do this, there's other things that say do that. um, the biggest takeaway I think that we should all have is that we need to learn how to trust our own instincts and start doing what we know works best for us. So I know myself, I'm not a person that really does well knowing about all this negative information constantly. So I limit how much news I consume in a day. I might see the news for 30 minutes in a day, maybe less. But the point is, I've done that for myself because I know that helps me stay on track with what I'm trying to do and not get caught up in this cycle of negative thinking, because it's very easy to get wrapped up in that. It's like a cycle. They keep on pumping out a new story. Everyone starts reacting to it. People start going and doing things that are irrational and kind of erratic behaviors. And then we're back to square one again, where they say, "Oh, that was actually completely wrong. That doesn't apply to preventing the spread of corona. Now we all need to do this." And then boom, it's another cycle of people reacting. Main thing I could say is let's all use techniques like meditation, deep breathing, maybe yoga, getting out and exercising. And it doesn't mean that you have to go out to the park. You can just literally go into your basement and use the stairs in your stairway, or you can use a yoga mat and do push-ups and use your own body to create an exercise routine. And there's plenty of people posting great exercise workout routines now. So find what makes you feel better. and try to really focus on your wellness and taking time for that. If that means doing something like writing a journal about how you feel and venting, do that. If it means calling a friend to express how you're feeling, do that. Use your intuition and really just listen to what your intuition's telling you.
So a lot of it, I guess, is learning and cultivating a self-awareness is an important part.
Absolutely.
How did that reveal itself to you?
Well, yeah, interestingly enough, just like how a lot of the other people that are on board with this project, our mentors, um, a lot of us learned these lessons and evolved by going through hardships, by going through one of like some of the most difficult periods that we've ever had to face.
Right.
And there's two different acronyms for fear. One is like face everything and rise up, or and rise. And another one was like just kind of like run, run for it or whatever, escape. And the point I'm making is really, there's this great book. It's called The Obstacle is the Way. And I haven't read this one myself yet, but I heard someone speak about it. And this person was a highly successful entrepreneur that launched some apps that many of us use now on a day-to-day basis. And that was one thing that he kept on talking about when I was going through my transformational phase. And I was like, realizing that the way you can overcome your own issues is by not trying so hard with them.
Right.
What I found for me was that when I stopped trying so hard to control when everything happened, to control when I, did this specific thing for my career, for my goal, or when I accomplished a certain thing for my life, before I used to be caught up in this mindset that everything's got to go according to my plan and the way I envision it. And the moment that set me free was when I realized that I'm actually not so in control as much as I think I am and as much as I'd like to be. So I've embraced just letting go and being in the present. And it's done wonders for me in terms of allowing me to focus my energy to produce the best work I can when I am doing something, and ultimately increase my quality of life. That's the conclusion. Is it's really changed my quality of life because I've reduced how much I suffer through the mechanisms that have taught me emotion regulation, logical thinking through the process of something. Like just if I have an issue, if I know that there's going to be 3 or 4 variables I got to deal with, instead of just looking at the first one and addressing that one and then, okay, let's jump into the second one, taking a bigger picture stance where I look at all 4 variables or all however many variables there may be. And I look at all of them and I say, okay, if we were to do this with one and that with the second one and that with the third one, how would these 3 work together? Would they succeed? Would they have any pitfalls? What are the challenges? What are the obstacles I should forecast and foresee and try to prevent from even becoming obstacles? So it's just really transformed my whole way of thinking. And like I said, thinking things through. That's what it's done for me,
Yeah. I originally said, like that I felt what you're describing, now more than ever is exceptionally valuable. One, because, it helps you cope, but 2, because, you don't have any value to give away to others unless you take care of yourself first, right? You have to give to yourself so that you have something to give away. I think that the concept of fear that you just mentioned is something that I don't think it's really set in for a lot of people yet. But I think that, there are certain milestones in the whole trajectory of this pandemic that are really hurtling towards us. We just had our 1,000th death our 1,000th case in Canada, and 150 in Ontario today. Our 1,000th case in Ontario, I think, today. Anyway, I'm not going to get into the metrics because I'm not familiar enough with them. But in regards to fear, a lot of people are afraid of what's going to happen. And given your experience of real estate and what we talked about in our first crack at this,
Yeah.
a lot of people are afraid of basically a race to the bottom scenario. What would happen if we saw a supply flood? This is the kind of fear that people are facing right now. So given, your experience and success in real estate and your newfound passion for this project, what happens in the middle there between, the qualitative and the quantitative pieces of that fear?
Yeah, well, what I could tell you is just based on life experience. I was in undergrad during the credit crisis in 2007 and 2009, that period where the US real estate market just completely ballooned and exploded, and then, a huge recession thereafter. And the one thing I kept hearing in every class, the professors kept on talking about the market psychology and how the average investor is feeling, how the average consumer is thinking, what are they spending. Um, there are certain characteristics and types of behaviors that do indicate certain things. One of them is that, the stock market, we always were taught that it's the first indicator of what's going to come in the regular market, whether it's real estate or just general, GDP and whatnot. And what we were taught is that 6 months after whatever occurs in the stock market, we start seeing shifts in the market, generally speaking. So I'm starting to think that there's going to be a panic setting in, and it's going to affect different groups in different ways. So my projection is that, like you did say, yes, there is going to be a supply flood, absolutely. And I'm already starting to see signs of it. So I still am a realtor, and I do hold a real estate license. So even this morning, I went online and just was checking out local neighborhood, looking in some areas, some blocks not far away from where I live, and starting to see that, oh, wow, like the same time about 3 weeks ago, I would see, in a given week, only 10 new properties come in a community on the market. Whereas now I'm starting to see numbers like 40, 50, 60, and I'm starting to see that, oh crap, this is a direct signal. Well, it does happen to correlate with the spring market, which is when listings always do increase quite a bit. But it's so quick right after the pandemic kind of being issued, and then everybody being told to stay at home, and the markets being flattened by everybody not working. um, I'm not surprised at all. But my logic is, Daniel, I'm not showing any properties. I'm sure you're not either nowadays. How do these agents, or these sellers for that matter, think that they're going to be able to sell right now? They're probably not going to be able to attract people to walk into their homes even, let alone put an offer and take further steps. So I think that's only going to exacerbate the problem, Daniel, because you already see supply floods happening. Now that's one group. One group that is probably in that category, there's two different groups I see. One is people that own their homes, they're long-term vision, they don't see any need to sell or to buy something else, or they're staying put, they're happy where they're at. They are not going to be affected whatsoever, because long-term, we know real estate always goes up. There's no losing long-term. They're going to stay put. My other thought is those who are um, individuals who are over leveraged. Let's say, for example, they purchased about a year ago, and now they are, looking at a huge monthly mortgage payment. And let's say both incomes in the household just got laid off. They're on EI now. Those people are going to start to think about, oh dear, well, I'm an independent contractor, or I'm a small business owner, and I don't have any safety net. Everything is riding on my real estate holdings and the savings we have, which are quickly being used on paying our mortgage bills. Those people are going to start being the first to set us down the trend of going down the downward spiral. Their desperation is going to define how quickly and how drastically the market starts to shift. And I think some of them are going to be extremely desperate, given the fact that just 2 years ago, in 2, 3 years ago, we hit peak numbers, and we hit numbers that people were buying in at super high pricing. And literally within a year, 24 months from when they purchased, their equity, they were in negative equity, they're under the water, so to speak. That's what happened in the States in 08, 09. That's not what I'm saying is going to happen here, because I don't have a crystal ball. Anything can happen, right? But I really do think that with the long-term people, that's going to help insulate the market from extreme movements. But those investors who got in not too long ago with very little equity involved now, those are going to be the first to flood the market. Those crappy Airbnbs that are not income producing, or, you know, um, primarily just those types of investors, over leveraged and people that are not producing income. I see them being the ones that are going to be causing the biggest effects. But other than that, My projection is, like I said, 6 months from when we saw the initial shock to the stock market, we'll see the major effects. So, with that being said, I'm anticipating October, no, September, October. We're going to see some big movement of this year in the stock in the real estate market, and I do believe that this is going to be a double dip recession. So we are going to experience the initial dip, which is happening now, and it's only going to be accelerated by Corona and how it's crippled our markets. Um, but the second dip, I don't see that really happening until 2021, a year from now. Maybe going into 2022, we'll start bottoming out and starting to head back into a growth market slowly.
So no V-shaped recovery in this.
Tell me a bit more about that. What do you mean in terms
Just down then up. You know,
of?
like your oh wait, I don't know.
Right, right.
As
Yeah.
a as somebody who studied law, take everything that you just said from the perspective of somebody who studied law, and then also from somebody who is passionate about educating people to get through their fear. You know, how would you, if you're operating as an agent or as a lawyer, what are you going to tell clients to put into a contract right now to protect themselves? And then the other part is, what are you going to tell people right now to coach them through the fear of the fear and anxiety associated with the unknown of what is going to happen over the next 6 months?
Right. Well, in terms of what I would suggest in any legal regards, I don't have any legal advice per se. I can't give any legal advice, but what I do want to say is each person's situation is uniquely their own. So they need to really look at their situation. And one thing that I've been taught by a mentor of mine who is a bank, he runs a bank in Michigan, and he explained to me that one of the best ways to come face to face with your fear or with something you're uncomfortable with, whether it's the current situation, whether it has to do with other issues in your life, it's literally to like just take a pen and paper and write it down and start facing what it is. So if you're facing mountains of debt, he suggested write down, Visa card, 10,000, mortgage debt, 200,000, whatever, write it all down, even to small things like, the car payment and other stuff that's going to be not that noticeable generally speaking, but right now in these dire straits, that cable bill matters, that Netflix payment every month, these start to add up, and we need to quantify that. So one thing he says is like just put it all on paper and just face it, look at it, and try to come to terms with, how bad is this really? Was I overestimating how bad my situation is? Was I underestimating that? So that's one thing in terms of legal advice, in terms of anybody that's currently going through this situation and what they would want to do to protect themselves. Secondly, I would advise clients to right now um, take extra time to review things in terms of the contracts and the paperwork and any agreements that you're going to get involved with. In the past, when the market was doing great, we would maybe take a job offer and just be excited about a job and just sign away. We wouldn't even bother to read and see, can they terminate us without cause? Is this an at will employment situation where either party can just terminate the relationship, or is this a contractual relationship where the employer has certain responsibilities to the employee and vice versa? So you really want to just be completely aware of what it is you're signing if you are getting a new job, or if you're approached by your current employer and told that, hey, we're changing things up, such and such has caused us to cut back, we're either going to ask you to come back when we have jobs, we're laying you off right now, or we'd like you to consider this different category for your pay and your position. Would you sign this? Before you sign anything of that sort, make sure you speak to somebody you trust, either your legal representative, or maybe a friend or family member who is kind of familiar with contracts and can walk you through pitfalls of what you're about to sign. And just otherwise, in terms of generally speaking, with facing their fears, there's so much out there. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We have been on this planet for so long. There are so many people that came before us that have done things that we strive to do. Live with peace and happiness and good mental health, good physical health. Whatever it is, you got to fill in that blank. I don't know what you want in your life, but for me, I identified those important factors, and I really carved out time to make those things something that I do on a consistent basis, and not just when I'm in a crisis, I go to my power hour or I go to this good habit to get me out of it. Because I cultivated the right kind of habits, I'm in a position right now where external sources of stress don't put me in such a stressful position as they used to, because I intentionally have reshaped how I emotionally respond to any given situation.
Smart. I want to be mindful of your time, so I guess we can start to wrap up a little bit. What is there anything else that you want to add? I know you got a lot of really good insight to shed in regards to personal, interpersonal, and self side of this whole thing. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing, or is there anything that you'd like to add before we sign off? And then, yeah, anyway,
Yeah, yeah, great. Thanks, Daniel. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to connect with your audience on the Brick and Mortar Show. So I wanted to introduce everybody to our concept, the Power Hour. We're just called Power Hour Talks. You can find us at powerhourtalks.com or on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube with the same handle, Power Hour Talks. Um, we got this book that we're working on right now. We're writing it. It's going to be coming out in 2021, co-authored by me and 3 other authors, each of us with a unique story, all of them really having one thing in common: how perseverance and resiliency and foundational life skills set us on a different projectile to accomplish things that we aim to do and that we never even imagined that we could do someday. We didn't even know that we had that inherent power within ourselves. But, you know, getting back to the whole not needing to reinvent the wheel, there are so many people with knowledge that have written books and have written articles and have created videos and posted stuff online, and you can empower yourself and you can learn so much. And that's what this movement's all about, just trying to create a unified force to really bridge the gap between mental health needs and um, everybody's personal struggles, because we all go through it, but we all have a story about how we overcame it and how you can overcome anything too, as long as you have that desire within you to improve and grow. And you know that's really what we're all about. So
so
we
who's your target audience, and like, what if I'm making the recommendation to somebody who needs what you're providing? What is it? Is it for everyone, or is there someone specifically?
To be honest, so because we don't want to be so broad that we don't have a target audience. Right now, we're really focused on a few small groups. They're actually large groups in terms of population, but a few specific groups. One of them being young adults and teens, maybe from 13 to entering college, 19. Those years, whether they're athletes or they're just kids that want help in terms of mentorship, guidance from others who have been there, who have been in their position, student athletes who would love to work with former NFL athletes and NBA players and whatnot, and learn about what were the intangibles that made this player stand apart from that player. Because it's not always about talent. There's a lot of guys who have enormous amounts of talent, but they just don't know how to regulate their emotions, how to stay in the moment and really produce their best when they're on the field. They're too caught up in other little things. And then the guy who outworked them, who didn't have all that talent, but simply outworked them and out hustled them with the commitment that he or she set for accomplishing their goals and doing the little things every day. Um, we're all about that. We're all about showing how it's not all about talent. It's all about hard work. It's all about, showing others your value and coming forward with the attitude of collaborate, let's synergize. We can do more together than we can ever do as independent individuals. So why don't we work together and bring our best product forward to make not only this project better, but to make everybody else's life in a way that, everybody that's following us, their life potentially become better and increase the quality of it by showing them the techniques and tools that we simply learned. And not everything is something that we created, but some of it is just things that we learned along the way from lived experience.
Awesome, awesome. I really appreciate your time and your insight, and for everybody who's interested, I'm going to be posting all of your info in the show notes as well.
Great, thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
man. So I'll make sure everybody check out Power Hour Talks, and thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
In the real estate market, and hearing about solving a lot of the fears and anxieties that people are going to be facing from the heart rather than I think that's something that people really need to hear right now. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And to all your listeners, stay safe and please practice social distancing. We're going to get through this, and it'll only be a shorter problem the more of us cooperate and follow the instructions of the leaders in this current